I'm Stacy Roberts, 25, and my mom has always had a favorite, treating my younger sister like she was royalty while I had to fend for myself. I saved up working as a remote programmer in Denver, putting in late-night grind sessions to carve out a decent life. So when my sister racked up $15,000 in reckless charges, my mom showed up at my door insisting I pay. Family sticks together, she said, voice sharp, like it was my obligation to rescue them again. I refused outright, telling her I earned that money the hard way and I wasn't handing it over. Her face twisted. She stomped off and slammed the door. That night, while I slept, she came back using the spare key I'd forgotten to retrieve. The next morning, my phone exploded with bank alerts. My credit card emptied. My savings gone, wiped out to cover my sister's mess. I stared at the screen, heart hammering, and I said nothing. No calls, no confrontation, just planning my next move. What happened after uncovered their scheme, flipped the script, and forced consequences they never expected. If you've ever felt trapped by family demands, you won't believe how this plays out. Drop in the comments what's the wildest thing a family member has demanded from you. Let's see who relates. That morning, I woke to my phone buzzing with bank alerts. I grabbed it half asleep and logged into the app. My credit limit was maxed, $15,000 gone from overnight charges. The transactions were payments to credit companies, all connected to my sister's debts. My stomach clenched as I scrolled. Each charge felt like a punch. How did this happen? I remembered the spare key I'd given Mom years ago, the one she still kept. She must have come back after our fight. My hand steadied as I dialed her number, anger rising with every ring. She answered like nothing was wrong. Morning, Stacy. Sleep well. I cut in low and firm. You took my credit card and wiped out my savings to pay Misty's debts. Silence hung for a beat. Then she sighed, not even denying it. You were being stubborn. Misty needed help. Family steps up. You'll get over it once you see her back on track. Her tone dripped with that familiar manipulation, acting as if she'd done me a favor. I tightened my grip on the phone, the betrayal stinging. That's theft, Mom. You broke into my place. She laughed it off. Don't be dramatic. It's not like I stole from a stranger. Cancel the charges if you're so upset. But the payments had already gone through. I hung up before she could twist it further, my head spinning. This was bigger than money now. Years of favoritism boiling over. I needed advice. So I texted Lori Patterson, my college best friend. We met at a downtown coffee shop, the Rocky Mountains visible through the window. She listened as I ran through the alerts and the call, eyes widening. That's insane, Stacy. She crossed the line. I nodded, shock shifting into resolve. Lori leaned in, practical as always. Don't react yet. Collect evidence first. Get your building security footage. Pull the transaction details. Then confront her with facts. We spent the next hour mapping out the plan. Her steady voice grounded me. By the time we left, I felt ready to fight back, step by step. Back at my place, I opened the building security app on my laptop. The footage from last night showed Mom slipping in through the side door around midnight, hood up, face half hidden, then leaving 30 minutes later carrying what looked like a small bag. My pulse spiked as I saved the clip, grainy proof that she'd entered without permission. Next, I dug through my email for the bank statements, printing out transaction logs that matched the video's timestamps. Every charge traced straight back to Misty's creditors. No witnesses. I even uncovered a string of recent texts from Mom, urging me to do something about the debt. One read, Misty's drowning. You can't just stand by. That sealed the motive. With the documents neatly filed into a folder, I felt a rush of control replacing the earlier shock from the call. My focus sharpened. Lori stayed with me, carefully helping label everything step by step. This is bulletproof, she said, her tone calm as she double-checked the dates. By early afternoon, the desk was buried in papers, my laptop frozen on Mom's departure frame. That's when I made up my mind to call Dad, Curtis Roberts. Since the divorce, he'd settled in a quiet town outside Denver, far away from Mom's turmoil. We hadn't spoken much lately, but no one understood her patterns better than him. His phone rang twice before he picked up, voice warm but cautious. "Stacy, is everything okay?" I got straight to the point, skipping the emotional lead-in. "Dad, Mom used my credit card to cover $15,000 of Misty's debts. I've got the footage and the proof." He fell silent, then let out a slow breath. "That's your mother, all over again. Remember your grandfather's will? He built in a safeguard for exactly this. Any fraud against family meant losing your share." My attention snapped to that. I'd heard bits of it years ago, but never looked closely. "Explain," I pressed. Over the next 20 minutes, Curtis laid it out carefully. Grandpa had split his estate evenly, but tucked into the fine print was a clause to shield family from financial harm, a safeguard he'd added after noticing Mom's tendencies in his final years. Her portion was $180,000, Misty's $45,000, both locked until they reached certain ages, unless fraud was proven. In that case, the money would shift to the remaining heirs, me and the cousins. As secondary trustee, I had authority to enforce it. "Once charges are filed, take it to court," he added. "I'll send you the trust documents tonight." When the call ended, my plan came into focus. Lori caught my glance and nodded. "That's your leverage. Combine it with the evidence, they'll have no escape." Later that evening, we reviewed the trust papers he'd emailed, her questions sharpening my strategy. By nightfall, the folder in my hands felt like a weapon, primed for the next step. With everything prepared, I headed to the Denver police station downtown. The building loomed stark against the mountain skyline, and Lori walked beside me, steady support. We requested the fraud division, and Detective Teresa Wong met us in a small interview room, her badge catching the fluorescent light. She listened closely as I laid out the chain of events, beginning with the unauthorized charges and presenting the printed records. "This looks serious," she said, flipping through pages as her expression tightened into focus. I showed her the surveillance clip on my phone, pausing on the frames of Mom slipping in and out of my apartment. Teresa nodded, jotting notes. "Unauthorized entries synced with the transactions. That's solid," she confirmed. She asked about family dynamics, and I explained the favoritism, Mom always rescuing Misty while leaving me on my own. Lori backed me up, filling in details from our prep session. By the end, Teresa promised to open a case, request full bank records, and schedule interviews. "We'll be in touch with your mother soon," she said, handing me a case number. Walking out of the station, a wave of both relief and dread hit me, the weight of escalation pressing down with full force. 2 days later, my phone lit up with an unknown caller. On the line was Jeremy Vaughn, my sister's fiancé, his voice tight with strain. "Stacy, we need to talk, just us." I agreed to meet him at a neutral spot, a riverside park near the Platte, where joggers moved steadily under the open sky. When he showed up, he looked worn down, shoulders slouched, hands buried in his pockets. Sitting beside me on a bench, he finally spoke. "I didn't know about the card," he said, eyes fixed anywhere but mine. "Misty told me you'd lent her the money, that it was just family helping out." I pushed him for clarity, and he admitted he'd overheard the police questioning her at their apartment the day before. Afterward, she'd broken down and told him everything. Misty had scoped out my place weeks earlier during a visit, paying attention to where I stored financial documents. She had pressured Mom into taking the card, insisting I'd never willingly agree. Their text messages revealed careful planning, the timing, even mocking how easily I'd given under pressure. Jeremy held out his phone, showing me screenshots. The dates lined up perfectly with my surveillance footage. "This isn't the woman I thought she was," he whispered, voice trembling. He told me he'd ended the engagement that very morning, slipping the ring back into her hand despite her begging. "She's crushed, but I can't marry someone who'd pull something like this." I immediately forwarded the screenshots to Teresa, strengthening our case. Jeremy gave me a brief nod before walking away, leaving me on the bench alone, staring at the steady flow of the river that mirrored the turmoil inside me. That conversation changed everything. Misty was no longer just caught in the fallout. She was an active architect of it. By the time I reached the courthouse in Denver, I was early, settling into the back row where the old wooden bench creaked beneath the weight of anticipation. Mom and Misty soon entered with their attorney, Philip Dawson. Their conservative outfits did little to mask their tense expressions. Uncle Marvin trailed behind, his jaw set, clearly intent on playing peacemaker. When the judge called the case, the prosecutor laid out the charges: unauthorized use of a credit card, racking up $15,000 in fraudulent payments. Teresa stood firm, presenting the evidence we gathered: video recordings, text exchanges, bank records. Mom shifted uneasily as the footage rolled across the courtroom screen, her late-night intrusion undeniable. When their turn came, Philip rose. "Your Honor, my clients wish to plead guilty under the agreement." The judge lowered her glasses. "Proceed with allocution." Mom went first, her words barely above a whisper. "I entered my daughter's apartment without her permission, took her credit card, and used it to pay debts owed by my other daughter, knowing she had not consented." Her voice trailed into silence, her shoulders caving as quiet murmurs spread among the handful of people present. Misty followed, her eyes fixed on the floor. "I helped by pointing out where she kept her cards during a visit, and I knew the money was taken improperly." Her words cracked, the stillness of the courtroom amplifying her shame. During the break, Uncle Marvin caught up with me in the hallway. "Stacy, this has gone far enough. Let it go for the family's sake." I shook my head, unmoved. They chose this. He pressed on about forgiveness, about healing, but his words bounced uselessly against the hard facts. When court resumed, the judge dismissed his attempt, calling it irrelevant. The sentence was handed down: 3 years of probation each, 200 hours of community service, full restitution within 30 days, and mandatory counseling. Failure in any condition would mean jail. Mom and Misty nodded, the reality finally sinking in as they signed the documents. Philip whispered hurriedly to them, his defense strategy collapsing in the aftermath. As I exited the courthouse, I caught Uncle Marvin's weary glance. His effort to rescue them had failed. The day's outcome cemented their responsibility, their wrongdoing now etched into the public record. 1 week later, I visited Curtis at his home on Denver's outskirts. Surrounded by shelves of estate law books, he had the trustee paperwork ready. Together, we reviewed Grandpa's will, confirming every clause aligned with the convictions. He confirmed it triggered the forfeiture, signing as co-trustee. That same afternoon, I filed the notice with the court, the clerk stamping it without delay. The process would take around 60 days, but the outcome was already set. Mom and Misty's portions would be reassigned to me and the cousins, compensation for the damage they had caused the family. Curtis drove me home. The silence in the car waited with the family's fracture. "You did what you had to," he finally said. "We're back." I waited for the aftershocks. A few days later, Mom called, her tone edged with panic. "Stacy, Philip says the trust is in danger. We need to talk." I kept it short. "It's already filed. The clause applies." She pleaded for another chance, promising change, but I cut the call. Misty sent occasional texts, half-hearted apologies mixed with desperate requests for leniency. I ignored them and stayed focused on my routine. 2 months later, the administrator's letter arrived, forfeiture approved. Mom's $180,000 and Misty's $45,000 were registered. My check came soon after, $140,000 deposit. The consequences hit them fast. Mom lost her job when her employer ran the background check during her certification. They cited her record and let her go. She scrambled for part-time work, her savings drained by legal fees. Misty faced harsher creditors and probation with her travel. With her job prospects shrinking, she turned to loans for restitution, but with interest rates of 23%, she was trapped in years of payments. Uncle Marvin reached out once, admitting the intervention had failed. "They're struggling," he said. "Consequences," the answer said. Meanwhile, Lori and I met weekly for coffee. Her steady support helped me. I left the money untouched, her cushion for the future. Mom and Misty's lives contracted. Probation check-ins, service hours, and growing isolation as relatives. Their decisions came full circle, reshaping everything without my back. Months later, I blocked every attempt at contact. No more voicemails begging for understanding. No No text filled with excuses. The silence gave me clarity, a calm space in my Denver apartment where I could focus forward. Lori and I began hiking the trails near Boulder every weekend. She pushed me up steep inclines, her energy contagious. At the top, handing me a water bottle, she'd smile. You've earned this freedom. Each trek rebuilt me, physically and mentally, turning fatigue into steady resilience. At work, I pitched a new project, a software tool for remote monitoring. It earned me a promotion and a raise. The extra income let me upgrade my setup, a second monitor, and noise-canceling headphones for focused coding sessions. Curtis visited monthly. Our dinners were simple, grilled steaks and talks about his retirement plans. He'd share stories of Grandpa's business instincts, reminding me where my drive came from. He'd be proud, Curtis said once, raising his glass. I nodded, knowing it was true. With the inheritance invested in a high-yield account, I built an emergency fund and even treated myself to a short trip to the Grand Canyon, its vastness reflecting the new expanse in my life. News of Misty reached me only through others. She worked at a call center, barely covering her basics, while probation drained her time. Mom downsized to a small studio near the mountains, piecing together odd jobs like data entry after losing her certification. Both lived in shrinking worlds, with relatives fading from their circles as the record followed them. At Lori's suggestion, I started therapy, not to heal old wounds, but to understand the shift. The sessions reframed everything. Boundaries aren't barriers, they're the ground you build on. Family ties require respect on both sides, not endless concessions. When manipulation eats away at trust, cutting ties protects your core. For anyone watching, see the signs early. Unspoken expectations, guilt tactics, constant demands. Stand firm. Build your own path. Let consequences teach where words fail. Real strength is choosing peace over obligation.